Hello and welcome back to 5 Minute Geography. However, this season we're going to be focusing on the Leaving Certificate Geography paper and getting them all important H1 answers by explaining as simply as possible the world around us. So, whether you're a student gearing up for exams or a teacher looking for extra resources, you're in the right place. So, subscribe to stay updated and let's tackle this course together.
And this is barriers to economic growth. Barriers meaning things that stop countries from growing economically. So things that stop countries from developing. And our worked example is Sudan. So for Sudan, we need to have a little bit of background knowledge. Well, the first thing about it is it's an extremely poor country. I don't know if you remember the human suffering index that we looked at a couple of weeks back. It's 89 out of 100 on the human suffering index, which is extremely high. It's one of Africa's largest countries, and it has a population of 37 million people, and it has a growth rate of 3%. What that means in real terms, it's just growing extremely fast. So the population is growing extremely fast. Its density, however, is very low. So remember, density is the number of people per kilometre squared. So Dublin has 1,000 people per kilometre squared. Here in Sudan, there's only 12 people per kilometre squared. So the density is very low. When you have low density, it's not likely that services would like to move into that area just for 12 people. It doesn't make any sense. It's too much money. Its GNP, so its gross national product, is $310. So very, very low. A little bit about Sudan. You can see it here on the map. Very large country in Africa. The factors that are stopping the economy from growing is the climate. Stops the economy from growing because if you look at where Sudan is, it's smack bang in the middle of the Sahara Desert. Population growth is preventing the economy from growing. The economy itself, the type of economy, if it's a primary sector or what type of economy we're going to look at, and war. War has a huge impact on whether an economy grows. So those are the four factors. And if you have a look again, these are actual statements. Climate is a statement. So to back climate up, or that statement up, we need to have an explanation and an example. Same with population growth, the economy, all of these are statements. So here's how we back it up. Statement or factor number one is climate. That's your statement. So now we need to back it up with explanations and examples. Well, it's a Sahel region. In other words, it's located in the Sahara Desert. It has very variable rainfall, little to none really. It suffers from a thing called soil erosion or desertification. And if you have a little look back on your notes on soil and desertification when we looked at our hot desert climate, desertification means the land is slowly turning into desert. This desertification means that farming is very insufficient. There's not enough land to carry out farming. So the farms tend to be small. If the farms are small, well then it cannot feed its population. So this leads to a thing called famine and starvation. Okay, so that's our first statement with our explanation and example. The second factor, the second statement, is its population itself. The population is in stage 2 of the demographic transition model. If you look back on your notes from second year, the beginning of second year, we looked at the demographic transition model. Okay, so you must look back on that to get a good idea of what I'm talking about here. Basically, it's a very underdeveloped country, Its birth rates are very, very high. Its population is 37 million. And we know why birth rates are high, because of lack of education, the high infant mortality. In other words, there's a high likelihood that your baby is going to pass away, so therefore you have more babies just to ensure that some survive. There's very little access to education, so the population doesn't have access to education. And then children are seen as an asset. In other words, children are seen as free labour to work on the farms or to work at home. Okay, and that's been a barrier to economic growth. So again, population is your statement, and then you have your explanation and examples. Factor number 3 is the type of economy or industry that Sudan has. Its population is mostly rural, so there's very few cities or centres of population. Centres of population are a very good thing to have because it makes it cheaper for companies or services to be provided. So imagine how cheap it would be just to put one post office in the middle of Dublin, so hundreds of thousands of people could use it, or having to put about 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 post offices in the middle of the west of Ireland to get as close to all those little populations as possible. It doesn't make sense to move in, if you're an industry, into a rural place where there's not a lot of population, because you won't have customers and you won't have people to work for you. It's over dependent on basic commodities like cotton. Again, a commodity is a raw material that's sold on the open market. If the price of cotton goes down globally, well, Sudan's entire economic plan goes bust, and therefore they cannot plan for any future in terms of education, housing, and infrastructure. So the economy, again, as I just said, is based on agriculture, and it's based on cash crops. Cash crops basically are food that are sold for market use, okay, so for sold for a profit. If cotton, cocoa, coffee collapse on the global market, well, their economy collapses also. Okay, the last one there is war. So Sudan, again, war is a massive barrier to economic growth. Sudan spent a vast amount of its money on arms or on weapons because of the civil war that's happening in Sudan with the Arabs in the north. They spend 9 times more money on arms than they do on healthcare. So if they spend $1 on healthcare, they spend $9 to $10 on weapons. So imagine if they weren't spending that money on weapons, the amount of money that could be put into the education and the healthcare and the housing. Not only are they spending money on weapons, but they are also destroying the little infrastructure that's there by bombing, by running tanks through the towns and villages. So any infrastructure that's already there will be destroyed because of war. When the war is over, they have to then spend the money on rebuilding the infrastructure that was already there, never mind improving or adding to it. War also produces refugees who leave the land because of fear of the war. These people are farmers. These people are workers. If these people leave the land, it can also lead to famine because people aren't being fed. Our example here is during the last famine in Sudan, 1 million people died. It's a huge number. Like 1 million people died in 1845 in Ireland's famine. But 1845 was such a long time ago. To have this happen in modern times, 1 million people dying from starvation, is just crazy. Again, this is a huge barrier to economic growth. This stops any possibility of Sudan moving from developing country to developed country. Couple of little points of interest here for you. If we compare Ireland to Sudan, this is 2011 census, or 2002. I was either 2011 or 2016, but the population was 4.6 million. Sudan 37 million. The gross national product for Ireland is $50,000, whereas it's only 310 for Sudan. We in Ireland can live up to 81, it's actually gone up to 85 years of age, whereas you will be lucky to hit 61 years of age in Sudan. For every 1,000 births in Ireland, 6 babies pass away, but for every 1,000 births in Sudan, 81. So 81 babies pass away for every 1,000 babies born. And infant mortality refers to babies passing away before they reach the age of 1 year old. Maternal mortality is the women passing away while giving birth. So that's for every 100,000. So for every 100,000 in Ireland, 14 women pass away. For every 100,000 in Sudan, 2,000 women pass away. Huge number. In Ireland, we have 219 doctors for every 100,000 people, whereas in Sudan, they've only 12. So you can see the massive difference in those two countries.
If there's a particular topic you'd like covered or something you're struggling with, feel free to get in touch in the comment section below and I'll aim to cover it in future videos. So subscribe to stay updated and let's tackle this course together.